Hello, good afternoon. You're welcome to Agenda on TV3. My name is Deborah Kwabla. We know the 1992 Constitution of Ghana guarantees education for all, irrespective of ethnicity, race, or religion, and this includes children with special needs. We know that in 2016, a policy was launched in this country with a fully fledged implementation plan to kickstart inclusive education in Ghana. How are we doing? Where are we? That's what we're discussing this afternoon. With me in the studio to do the discussion from far left, we have Mr. Jalal Odum. He's the National Coordinator, Inclusion Ghana, and he was also a member of the technical working group that worked on the policy, so he has a lot to share with us this afternoon. In the middle, we have Madam Hannah Ahaji. She's a founder, Special Mothers Project, and on my immediate left, we have Mr. Jeremiah Bedushaya. He's a research and planning officer from the Special Education Division of the Ghana Education Service. Welcome, gentlemen and lady, to Agenda.
Thank you.
We'll start with you, Jadel. Children with special needs are included in everything that we're supposed to be doing as a country. And the 1992 Constitution guarantees that. But for the purposes of our viewers, who do we categorize as children with special needs?
Okay, so we are talking about children who have particular educational, for purposes of this conversation, we are talking about people who, when they go to school, they have particular, needs that if you take care of, then they are able to participate in the classroom or participate in the general education. So you're talking about people like orphans, you're talking about street children. Of course, when a child who is on the street goes, out there in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening to go and sell on the streets, obviously, when this child comes to class, you see that the mindset or the mind is out there. And so the child may not be able to concentrate. And so this child has a special need. You have people with epilepsy, asthma. An asthmatic child may be sitting close to, for instance, a cupboard. And obviously the dust, with the books and things like that, obviously can affect such a child. And so this child has a special need. And if you're not careful, then this child will sit by the cupboard every time coughing, and always they have crisis, and so may not be able to participate in the class maybe in a week, in 2 weeks, and may not show up in school. And so if you look at this child who, have these needs and you take care of it, then you are helping the child to be included in the class. But particularly we have children with disabilities. And obviously disabilities has some special needs around it. You cannot put a child who has a very low vision, for instance, all the way at the back. You tend to find children who sometimes they are sitting at the back. When they are coming to write, they come in front to write. That child is obviously having some challenges, and that is a special need, and you need to take care of. And you have children who have physical difficulties. Again, you want to look at the classroom arrangement. That will help the child to be able to access the classroom very well and be able to participate. So generally, when you're talking about special needs, you're talking about particular needs of this child that can help the child to access and participate in the classroom.
Jerry, you are from the education, and looking at the categories, there are many, many children, I assume, in this country that have those special needs. How are we know the policy was launched in 2016. How are we doing in terms of the implementation of the policy? Because that policy seeks to include everyone.
Yes, as far as implementation is concerned, we are in 7 regions, beside the Ashanti region, Western region, and the Ranfo region.
So all the other 7 regions are implementing inclusive education.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about the policy. What does the policy seek to achieve, and why do we have to put together a policy?
The policy seeks to achieve equitable access to education, quality education. It said that, you see, the child with the center of the learning process must not be made to adapt to the system, but the system must adapt to the needs of the child. In fact, that is the strategic goal of the policy. So that each child should benefit from the learning process. Like Jalil was just talking to you about, a child with visual impairment. The child has been diagnosed. And maybe all the child needs that the child must get a little bit closer to the board. Because of the...
Who does the diagnosis of the child? Because the school system...
What happens is that the children are screening, then they are referred to assessment centers. Then at the assessment center, they are further referred where their situations are quite, we have some challenges. They will further refer to a medical doctor. And we have hospitals that they go to. So when they are referred, the doctors diagnose how the child must be treated in the classroom. Then the child comes back. Then the feedback from the doctor helps the teacher to know how to manage that child in the classroom.
Okay, we will get into the who does the diagnosis and in the school environment, what you look out for and all that. But then we will look at that when we get. But do you get the feeling that the system is actually implementing or looking at the policy and making concrete steps and actions towards implementation?
Okay, thank you very much. I was very happy when I learned that Ghana had an inclusive education policy. Happy because I have
launched last year in 2016.
Yes, happy because I have a child with special need, and I feel that my child has a right to education. A journalist by profession, so I actually went ahead, and he knows, went ahead to do stories before the thing was launched. Go to him, interview him, and write on it because I was eager for that policy to come into place. But the problem we have in this country is that there is a very wide gap between policy on paper and what actually happens on the ground. So when we are talking policy, we talk it very beautifully. But go to the ground and you'll see whether children with special needs, and I talk about special needs because I am a mom of a child with special needs, whether they have access to education in this country. The answer is a big no. We don't have inclusive education in Ghana. We have it on paper, but it's not working.
Well, we are talking about children with special needs, including inclusive education. This edition of Agenda is sponsored by Star Ghana. I'll come back to you, Jerry. You are from education. And like she said, practical. She has a child with special needs. The policy is there. The implementation plan is there. It was launched somewhere in 2016. We know it's a 2015 document. So that document should be 2 years old. And you are talking about 7 regions. Well, specifically in those 7 regions, what are you implementing as Ghana Education Service?
But we are in 20 districts.
20 districts. So in a typical district, what are you implementing?
Now, in a typical district, children are screened.
Every child?
Yes, every child is supposed to be screened. Children are screened. Where children need, when they are screened, in fact, the teachers do basic screening. Now, what we have done in the district is that every district has what we call district inclusive education team. Diet. Now, these people have been trained to be able to manage inclusive education in the districts. Now, these children, when they are screened, they are referred to assessment centers.
But do these teachers have the expertise to screen and be able to identify these levels of disability or this level of needs that the children have? Because some of the needs are is a very wide. Looking at the list that Jelos shared with us. Street children with
the teachers
cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, very conditions.
The teachers are not medical practitioners.
Exactly, so that's why I'm wondering how they are able to do screening. So what happens is that
they do basic screening, but there's a district diet, which includes Ghana Health Service, social workers, and other decentralized agencies. Now, it's a whole team that does the screening. But in the classroom and in the school, teachers have been taught basic screening. Now, they don't actually come up with diagnosis. No, they can't do that. But they come with suspected cases.
And then they refer.
When they refer, they are further assessed. It's when they are assessed further And the assessment center found out that, oh, they need diagnosis from medical practitioners. Then they are referred to the hospitals. Then an in-depth assessment and diagnosis is given to these children. Then the report comes back to the school. And where, and in this case, government, the medical practitioners make specific recommendations concerning each child. And there, the child is able to place properly. So that where the child's case is severe and profound, the child goes to the special schools. But where it's mild and moderate, the child is mainstream. And then the necessary assistive devices, if available, are given the child for the child to be able to learn equitably with the rest of the regular children in the school.
Yes. Jalal, looking at this example of what happens typically in a district, we know that children who get to school are those who are sent to school. How about the majority of children who do not get into the classroom and all that? How are we managing them as a country? You were part of the policy development. So in terms of policy formulation, what were the considerations for making sure that children within the environment, those that parents are hiding and those that family do not think these children can access education or have what it takes to learn, how do we get them into the school system for this whole process to take place for them to have education? Okay. Guaranteed by the Constitution.
Okay, so basically what has been done is we are looking at several strategies to achieve this. And one of it is awareness raising. Now, you have parents who are hiding their children because they just don't know how to deal with these children. They think that when the children go to school, they are going to get hurt. And I'm sure, you know, most of these mothers that we have been working with think like this or feel that way. So there's been awareness raising.
Isn't that legitimate, looking at the school environment?
It is not. It is not. And that is why there are several things that are being worked on to achieve this.
Because, for example, I'm saying, isn't that legitimate? I'm asking that question because you have a child who sits in a wheelchair, and if this child cannot wheel the chair into the classroom, isn't that a concern of the parents that then this child is not going to get to school, right?
But that is why, as part of the policy, and we are looking at the issue of infrastructure, making sure that access is created to the classroom. So in terms of a child with a wheelchair, and I mean, let's get to this point that it is a process. This inclusive education is not a one-day thing. It's a process. So it's going to take some time. And I believe that if all the strategies that we are going to be talking about are going to be achieved, then this is going to be very easy. Now, I'll tell you what. One of the things is that we are looking at making sure that the infrastructure is fixed, and talking about even access in the school system, looking at a playing field. You can see that even some of the school playing field has some, you know, small stones that can easily trip someone. Now, that must be fixed. You're looking at, for instance, a classroom that has steps into the class. Now, ramps are being created. And let me give you a story which is very interesting. Now, in a particular school where you have, for instance, a teacher where, I mean, it was raining and this teacher had the motorcycle parked, you know, outside the classroom. Now, when the teacher had to get the motor onto the veranda, the teacher had to use, you know, the ramp that has been created. This is telling you that inclusive education is not only going to benefit the children, and so everyone, but particularly in terms of strategies, we are talking about making sure that everyone understands that inclusive education is key to the success of every child in the community. So you have traditional authorities being involved. So for them, they are going to make sure that the standards are being kept. You are talking about contractors who will also be educated, you know, on, you know, constructions and gradients that they should use for ramps, in terms of window sizes, because even ventilation into the classroom is very key. You are talking about opinion leaders, district assemblies, because sometimes assemblies are allocating funds for buildings, and yet they are not keeping to standards.
But do we actually see these things in the communities, in the public schools? Do we see them? The things you are describing, ramps,
yes,
and
but
making sure the compound is not picking all those things that can cause harm and all that. Do they exist?
What exists is that in the past, these considerations have not been made, and so you have certain, structures that are not accessible. But we are moving away from that, and so even currently, if you look at the school building, for instance, where there's no light in the classroom, which also affects people, because look at even a room where you go in and then there's darkness. Immediately you get out of the room, you see that your eyes begin, blinking in a particular way. It tells you that if the room is very dark, it's going to get some of the children blind. And so the idea of inclusive education is to ensure that if there is not much good windows according to the standard of inclusive education, then sometimes you can take off some of the roofing sheets and put, these lighter roofing sheets on it so that it can provide.
You know, the policy
light.
that we launched last year says every 5 years we will review it. So what
That's
it means
correct.
is that we've done 2 years, 2015, 2016, and we have 3 more years to review it. Do you feel that we are making progress? Please, my dear,
Yes,
go
can I
ahead.
talk
Do you
about a
feel
bit
that
of
we
the-
are making progress?
As I've
Because
said already, the
2 years
policy is not
after
even being implemented. That is the thing. One, it's not that no parent with a child with special need will say that I want to hide my child. No, that doesn't happen.
But we know there's stigma.
No, I don't even talk about stigma. I have personally tried to go into a public school with my child. Let me tell you what happens. First, if your child is not walking, the special educator there will tell you that maybe they will not tell you point blank that we are not accepting your child, but they will frustrate you. Go and do assessment. That's the first thing. Even though they talked about the child being in school and then when they see a problem, the child is referred. That is not how it works now.
So even the admission...
Your child is not admitted. If they see that your child is not walking, your child is not talking, your child is not toilet trained, your child cannot feed him or herself, the child will not be admitted in a government school, even where government has control and that policy is supposed to lead so that even the private people could follow. It is not working. There is a school in Medina. It's a unit school. My project, the Special Mothers Project, adopted this school. First, the infrastructure is not accessible at all. TV3 has done a story on a child who is there. And that child is there because the mother is a teacher in that school. That is why
So
she
that
is
child is
there.
getting additional support.
Because the mother is there. There is no child with cerebral palsy in that school. We've had parents try, they've been frustrated, so they won't even accept you in the first place. What we are talking is a bit advanced. We are talking about just accessing education. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It is not there.
But your reaction?
Can I react to this? I
Yes.
think that, but I'm surprised Hannah is saying these things because, look.
She's speaking from,
yes.
from a mother's point of view.
Where?
And she says that
And I have a very cordial relationship with the special education unit because I know, yes, I go there. I go with to the director to go and
so
talk.
if she has this, if she's seen, she's experienced, people close to her have experienced it, you can imagine the many mothers across the country who are, or the many parents who are going through this.
With the issues. See, we have been through all the 20 districts. This structure
In
that we are
5
talking
regions,
about,
it's like a drop in the ocean.
I agree with you. You see, it's a process. We are not saying
But
that.
the school I'm talking about,
We are not saying that. We are not saying that.
See if anything is
Daybreak tomorrow, the whole country inclusive. No, it's a gradual process.
2 years.
We've been to the districts. Look, they have done the ramps, the rails, and all that. Some
in
actually
Medina.
have not done quite well, and we go and support them. This is the way it must be done. This is the way we must go. We've been to the assemblies. We've talked to them. Medina that she's talking about, I'm aware of Medina. I've been there a couple of times.
Is it one of the districts that's supposed to be implementing inclusive education?
No, that's that's Lankwatana. It's not one of the districts. It's rather Gan East, Abokobi. But Lankwatana is not one of the districts.
But they have a unit school.
I know.
there.
I agree with you. There's a unit school there. That school is an old structure, and they need to modify it. You see, so we are not just saying that just as we say inclusive education, then we put down the building, put down facilities. No, it will take time. So I agree with you.
That's the thing, how long?
I agree with
Because
you.
we even went into health and we were prevented.
And I must say that that child she's talking about, we spearheaded her going to that school.
But her mother is a teacher in the school.
If I'm not a teacher,
how do I?
Her mother is like, okay. Last year in June, we put out a story of a young lady who wrote BEC. This lady, Matilda Agbenyega, had challenges in her BEC. Let's watch that story and then we'll come back to the studio to discuss.
Her disability is not a barrier to her dreams of becoming a medical doctor. Matilda is living with a condition called cerebral palsy. This is the general term for a number of neurological conditions which affect movement and coordination. She only started mainstream school in her teens, joining regular pupils at the Manual Presbyterian Basic School at Medina. With inclusive education, her lessons were tailored to meet her needs. Her mother, who wanted to remain anonymous, recounted challenges she had to overcome to enable Matilda access education.
And we sent her to a special school, but the special school was not doing much to help her. Even as at now, when we are going somewhere and we are walking, sometimes somebody can just look at her and then hit her foot against something, or some people even fall into a gutter, because I don't know whether she's a strange being.
As Matilda takes a giant leap to greatness, she first has to contend with a staircase that is not disability friendly and a classroom environment with no aid for children with special needs. She braved the odds and joined over 251 candidates at the Medina Islamic Center to write the Basic Education Certificate exams. Matilda is writing the mathematics paper. A student with cerebral palsy may find it difficult to write fast and legibly. In order to assist her, the West African Examination Council granted her the permission to use a laptop for exams.
We used to do group studies, and then where she can't learn, then we help her with the place she doesn't understand.
Currently, WAEC has a policy for special needs students which allows them to be given extra time during examinations. Unlike other students, Matilda has an extra 1 hour 30 minutes to complete the maths paper. Despite the additional time given her, there were still some difficulties.
Matilda, how was the paper?
It was a bit difficult.
How does it feel to write the BC?
It feels normal, but the arrangement was a bit not okay. The WAEC need to bring a computer, but they could not bring it.
So who helped you with the computer?
The computer is mine. The social welfare who bought it for me.
You're welcome back. That was the story we put out last year about Matilda Agbenyega. Your reaction, the use of the computer and the additional hours and all that?
Yes, I think West African Examination Council has given the special needs children additional hours depending on your need. Yeah, but in fact, talking to them, they told us that they cannot supply us with computers. But then, if an individual, you can bring your own computer.
Is it computer they need, or special equipment, special learning aids? Do they need, because this is her own computer, assuming she didn't have one?
Well, you know, Matilda's challenge was, I think, diagrams and all that. So we asked the maths teacher and then the ICT teacher to coordinate and see how best we get a software that will support her. In fact, they've come out with one mathematical code that will help in that direction. But as at now, I must say that we've not been able to get that mathematical code for it, that software for it. But we are still doing our
So when?
best.
Because there are many Matildas in this country.
I agree with you.
Many Matildas.
I agree with you. But when it comes to our attention, the best that we can do, we will do it. And honestly, Exam Council have been very charitable with us. You know, they try to assist them whatever possible means that they will help this child to be able to
WAEC is open to the issue. So
yes.
we need GES to hastening the pace. The pace is too slow because the Matildas and the many other children cannot wait. Hannah, do you connect to this story?
I connect very much. And in fact, I keep saying, when I see a child like Matilda, I even wish that, because you consider her case of cerebral palsy very mild. Very, very mild. She talks, she walks, oh, she's good. You see, we are not even saying that, for instance, people keep asking me what is the future for my child, and I say, oh, her future is in the hands of God, but I want her to have a social life. Go to school. It's not about many of them. Farida finished GSS and then went to do ICT. She didn't have to go to SS and all those things. We need them to mix with the society. If we talk about inclusion, because children with cerebral palsy, many of them, their cognition is intact. It's movement that is a problem. So if they even mix with other children and pick certain things, it will help them and build them up for what they want to be in future. But in this case, the access to the education is even blocked. That is the thing. I'll however not say that is all a gloomy picture. The fact that we see a child like Matilda go through the process means that there is hope for those of us whose children are young. We only hope that things will hasten a bit so that no child is left behind.
That's the word. No child should be left behind. And our constitution guarantees that. Jalil, the teaching side is critical because Jerry said the school environment, the child should not fit in, but the school should be conducive for the child to be at the center of the learning. And the teacher plays a big role. How important should we look at teacher training?
I think it's very important, and being part of the National Implementation Steering Committee, I think that I do know that some steps are being taken.
2 years on, some steps.
That is very correct. I think that you want to put in place the systems and the foundation to be able to host whatever, is going to come through. And I believe that 5 years on, we can come back here.
So what are the foundational issues that we are putting in place?
Right now, in terms of pre-service, I'm aware that at least they are going through some curriculum audit and trying to change the curriculum so that at least at a minimum, every teacher that goes through, pre-service training, they get at a minimum inclusive education training. And so they are going to come into the system with already this knowledge. Now, the existing teachers that we have, now some modules have been, put together, which is for, in-service training, so that there's a structure in the Ghana education.
But how do in-service training, in terms of the policy, how is in-service training going to get the education and the knowledge and the skill to be able to do inclusive education in their classrooms? How is the policy looking at that? Because
yes, but that is a step that has been taken, basically to develop the modules. The modules is kind of a training manual, and in the GS regulation, you have, in terms of teachers, they have a time that they meet together to, share ideas or to listen to new things that have come up and things like that. And so that is the opportunity for them to train, to get a training or to talk about the issues in the modules. And that is what will enhance, their pedagogy skills. Now, what I would say is that looking at where we were and where we have come. Now, Ghana started with a special education.
Way back.
That is trying to adopt the whole idea of inclusive education. The inclusive education was like 1990 when, leaders met in Jomtien in Thailand some years back. And this whole idea was to be able to universalize the access to education. Now, a lot of countries that have moved on are mostly developed countries. When you go to African countries, where we have gotten to, most of them are not there. Now, I'll tell you where we were. And then we came to integrated schools, where you have classrooms that are built within the regular school environment. The idea was to get them, to socialize whilst they are in school and part of the bigger group.
Thank God we've moved from that system, because then that tries to give the impression that all children with special needs can sit together, and then that will be okay. So I'm happy that we've moved away from that, because then segregating them within an environment where other children are doing in other classes is also part of the challenge. But it's a different story now.
It is a different story. Now we have moved. Now we are talking about inclusion. Now the point is that there has been several different policies trying to achieve inclusion. Now we have harmonized the policy into one, which is what we now calling the inclusive education policy. Of course, it was 2015, 2016, it was launched. What it is right now is that we are developing the foundations. And the foundation, you are talking about training of teachers, changing the curriculum, trying to screen children. In fact, a teacher who, should have basic screening skills. Like you see a child who is biting others. You see a child who is not sitting attentive. You see a child who is always coming to right in front. This teacher must be able to pick little, signs and say that, look, I suspect that this child has a challenge and needs some screening, and will go for, real diagnosis and later get help. Now, these are all structures.
So as part of the foundation, we have a checklist for a teacher to tick the boxes and say, when I find a child that is 1, 2, 3, then this, or we leave it open for the teacher's discretion, because then that is standardization.
Even these things that Jalil is talking about are already there. When I was in school, there were people that could not see the blackboard from the back, and the teacher moved them in front. That is not what I, as a parent, am talking about. I am talking about a child who is not walking, a child who is not talking, a child who is not toilet trained, accessing education. We are not talking about those who have attention deficit or something. I can say maybe when I was growing up,
wouldn't we be asking too much of the education system, knowing how
so that is where I wanted to come in and say that yes, the educational system is doing their best, but how long are we going to sit and say? Because trust me, there are parents who don't see a future for their children and are killing them. So are we going to sit as a country and say that, oh, we haven't gotten there, it's a slow process, so let parents kill their children, and when we get there, then they can just get in? We have to think outside the box. With the Medina school, and I keep mentioning it because my project went to adopt that school and wanted to raise funds for it. They are challenged. There are only 3 teachers, and if we have maybe 10 children, they will be pressed, especially if they are not working. But we wanted government to kind of employ some of the mothers. Many of the mothers have to leave their jobs because they have a child like this who is not in school, and they have to sit with them. So we even wanted government to use the common funds for disabled persons, a percentage of it, to pay these mothers, not give them money, but let them work in the schools as special needs assistants, changing the children's diapers, helping with feeding.
Because, and I'm looking at
some of these are things
I'm looking at the reality of the situation. We know we have special schools. We have special schools, and we want inclusiveness.
Well, I've seen an inclusive
The gold standard is inclusiveness.
I've seen an inclusive school in Ghana called Multi-Kids. That's where my child is. Luckily, my child is not at home. She's in school, and it's a perfect inclusive system. Someone is there to change her diaper.
But Hannah, I'm sure.
You see,
well,
let me tell you, Hannah is too, emotional
I'm not
the
emotional.
situation.
This is the situation on the ground. That is what parents are experiencing.
Yes.
They are not in school.
No,
I'm not being emotional. I'm being real.
No, I am also in the civil society, but
I'm a civil servant.
Yes, yeah, but just wait a minute. What it is that we are creating a sustainable system to host.
Be home.
No, relax. We are creating a sustainable system to host all the issues we are talking about. Mother going to the school to support a child. It's not sustainable.
But these days,
that is not what we are talking about.
Special schools are calling for caregivers, and there are mothers who go with their children in New Horizon and others to go and support them. So
yes, but that's not what we.
Yes, so that is why we are saying that government should do something that kind of absorb them quickly. We are not saying it should be a magical thing, but we don't want to wait for the children to die before.
I'm happy it's not magical.
Yes.
But Hannah,
please go.
You see, look, we have mothers who take care of these children. in the special schools, for instance. But when you talk about these uni schools, we don't have mothers. And we cannot have mothers in the uni schools.
Why not?
They are day schools. I'm going to be frank with you.
But you can have caregivers, day caregivers, who can give care. For instance, if Hannah is a working mother and she has additional help at home, and that help can provide support, isn't the policy looking at that opportunity for that child, especially if there's no New Horizon or there's no multi-kids close by?
I think because Anna is talking about
these special schools are not dotted
situation. You see, an ideal situation.
Well, our constitution guarantees every child that access.
Yes, but we are not getting there yet.
Why not? What are we waiting for?
Honestly.
How long? How long would it take us together? We'll go for a break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. This episode of Agenda is sponsored by Star Ghana. We'll be back shortly after this break. Yeah, welcome back. This is still Agenda on TV3. We are talking about inclusive education, and this edition of Agenda is supported by Star Ghana. And my guests are still seated. Before we went on break, we were talking about the realities of the situation and why the day schools or our unit schools cannot have support if the child needs it.
You know, the unit schools, you know, it's a form of integration. And we have a lot of socialization there with the other regular children. And there we don't employ day caregivers. But then, you see, with special cases, for instance, UNICEF have actually supported us enough. Provided wheelchairs, hearing aids, walking sticks, assistive devices, a lot. And other screening materials. Now, if we have cases like that, then we'll know how to place that child and support that child with these devices so that it will lessen the burden of parents, you see. So these are the things that we can also put in place. But some of these things, it will not even come to your attention. You see, you just hear the things on air. But meanwhile, in every district, there are educational authorities. You see, when these things are reported to them, they will give you the necessary advice.
What does it take to roll out inclusive education in a district? Because you've done 20 districts in 7 regions.
Yeah, what we do is that.
So what does it take, and why can't we fast track, knowing that we have children with special needs dotted across the country? They are not in special areas. They are all over.
Yes, you see, in fact, first we have to sensitize parents, the community about that, opinion leaders and all that, about that, before you now go into the, you know, and you need to mobilize people to understand, even the mothers with these special needs themselves. You see, there are people who are sometimes, you know, traumatized already.
We are talking about mothers as if they are no, as if they are no fathers. We should be talking about the fathers as well. It's not only mothers who have children with special needs.
Yes, but sometimes
we have parents with children with special needs.
Passionate, you see, and sometimes you need to roll them on board to let them understand the realities on the ground and be able to even support these parents, because it's a collaborative effort. If support is not coming from parents, teachers will not be able to support the child. So it should be a collaborative effort. That's why we had the PTAs there. That's why we had the S. They know where these children are.
What do we do within the school environment to support the child with special? Let's assume that in a district where it's being implemented, the sensitization, so parents are taking their children, the teachers, you know, we know there are a lot of stigma in the environments, in the communities. What do we do to make sure that the whole system is empowered? Because if we do them right, these children who are supporting their colleague with special needs, they themselves become very inclusive.
Yeah. So let's look at the stakeholders. Now, we are talking about traditional authorities. We are talking about, community opinion leaders. You're talking about parents with children with disabilities and parents with children without disabilities, because you'll be surprised that you can have a child, you know, with disability in a classroom. You know, it can be it can be epilepsy, and then a parent says that I've withdrawn my child. from the school because there's another child in that classroom who has epilepsy and it is transferable, which we know that that's not true. So you want to educate those ones. You want to also look at in the classroom. There are even some teachers who, a child with, for instance, maybe a disability like specific learning difficulties, maybe dyscalculia or dyslexia, cannot read very well, then maybe the teacher says that, hey, I mean, you are not intelligent. As for you, using very derogatory words. So this teacher needs some education on how to, behave in the classroom. Even the peers of this child must understand that, no, this child's disability or this child's special needs is not transferable and should be able to support, this child. The headmaster of the school who is doing the admission or the headmaster who goes on monitoring in the classroom must be able to understand this inclusive education. The circuit supervisor, talking about the one who is also constructing, parts of the school, like a classroom or something.
But we know recently, the recently constructed day secondary school, some of them are not disability friendly.
That's correct. And you see, it is also because
that shouldn't be happening.
We're not harmonizing our laws. We have so much.
Isn't that the usual that we do, like Hannah said, very nice policies, nice paper documents, and then when it gets into implementation, it's as if the paper does not exist?
I think it depends on how you decide to implement the policy. Because I've been part of this process, and I'm not saying that we have a very nice picture of what is going on in inclusive education. There are big challenges. As I'm speaking to you, there's an ongoing education sector analysis. The idea is to identify all the challenges in the whole education setup so that whilst we are implementing inclusive education, we are also fixing issues like teaching in the classroom, fixing issue like peer support, fixing issue like guidance and counseling, because some of these parents need some guidance and counsel. We have several things, but what we are trying to say is that it's not a very good picture of where we are supposed to be, but there is some steps that is being taken. And being a civil society, we always interrogate the issues that we identify as challenges and to try to get government, to support it. I'll say one of the big issue, and I have a very big issue with government of Ghana, that we currently don't have, government of Ghana is committed to doing inclusive education, but it must put in money to support inclusive education. That is what we need right now. If they put it in honest issue of so they are not admitting them, because what the teachers or headmistresses are saying,
money we need
money
because once
to
we have
support.
money for education and education is inclusive, it covers everyone.
It does.
Why must we put in money for inclusiveness?
You need assistive devices. You need access to the classroom. You need more classroom blocks.
You need to train the teacher, and that's why teacher training is very critical.
Yes.
So I want to say that I think that when it comes to inclusive education, the parent's point of view must be really looked at. Usually when they are having policies, experts sit down without the parent and make a policy for you. And how many people will have access to this, to even read? That's the first thing. I have read it cover to cover for about 3 times, and I've identified a few gaps in there. But that is not even my issue. Some of the things are also over-exaggerated. I haven't faced stigma as a mother with a child who has cerebral palsy. I walk with my child anyway. And she went she went to school at 7 months, like any other child will go to. And even at that time, I didn't know. But when I got to know that she had them, I just went to a school and said, my child cannot sit. I brought in a chair in the school. This is a chair I taught the teachers
how to use the chair.
And I will spend time and feed her for them to know that this is how I feed her. I make sure that I position her well and do this. I had very nice relations. I could spend time my morning with the teachers just to talk to them, show them videos about people who have, and they were very receptive. very receptive till the school population grew, and I think that she was too much work, so they started like sidelining her, and I just withdrew her. So usually when people understand that this is a situation, and I talk about cerebral palsy, so if people understand that, okay, so this is cerebral palsy, this is what it does, it's not infectious, they are open. You understand? So some of the things are things that we talk theoretically about. Oh, people stigmatize and parents don't want. Multi-kids that I talk about is a school where a lot of parents of different classes, high class, low class, and we sit as parents, those with children who are not special needs and those with special needs, and talk. And nobody says, oh, I am taking my child off this school because at multi-kids you see children with real special needs. So I keep asking, what is the difference between a school being done by a British person and a school being done in Ghana? It's just awareness, education, conscientizing the people. I think for me that awareness and education of what the situation is a major step to even getting this policy. Because if teachers understand, I have gone to public schools, the Medina school, and spoken with teachers, and they are ready to accept your child, but they will say that it's too much work. If the child cannot tell me that she wants to poo-poo and she poo-poos on herself, I'm alone, how do I leave the other children in? And that was why I brought the issue of mothers who are not working to be employed by government. He said government should pump in money. How? If these mothers are employed to help as special needs assistants in the government schools, we are not saying they should be caregivers or mothers.
We are looking at, I appreciate your deep understanding and consent to even support the unit schools and all that. But, you know, we have a number of challenges.
Yeah.
Diaper change and feeding.
Yeah.
And you need the right environment to do that. So it's a bigger issue.
It's not the environment.
It's a bigger issue.
For me, it's not the environment, but it's the passion. It's the passion to help a child like that. Not just because I have been, as for the Medina school, I used to go there to just see. It's not, the environment is not ideal, but you still feed the child. There's a chair, the chairs are not even appropriate, and we are praying that government go and refurbish that Medina school so that it becomes appropriate for the children. But you can sit there, you can sit on the floor. As a mother, you don't care, or as a caregiver, you can sit on the floor and feed your child.
But for the teacher, that's asking a little too much.
Yeah.
That's asking too much.
So that is why we are saying government should employ caregivers, if not mothers. Just government should employ caregivers into the educational system to help those with special needs.
What are we doing with the special schools?
Yes, the special schools.
Because we know that the inclusive education is important. We want every child in the regular school environment, but we know that some children will need to go to the special schools.
Yes,
because of their peculiar needs.
Yes, those with severe and profound, they will definitely be in the special schools and they will be taken care of. But in the long run, we expect that the special schools becomes a resource center that will support mainstream teachers in handling these children with special needs.
So gradually we will...
Exactly. It will be fading out.
Fading out.
Kind of resource
because
centers.
then that entrenched segregation.
Exactly.
You are special because you are in a special school, and so
integration
into society becomes...
Yeah.
So that's a long-term plan.
That's a long-term plan.
Now, before we get there, what are we doing to the special school to make sure that the varied disabilities or needs are covered in the special school? Because we know School of the Blind is doing great.
Yes. We are supporting them. Teachers have been trained, and we provide them with the basic teaching and learning materials. And then we also ensure that they get the right teaching. For this year, for all the schools for the hearing impaired, in fact, they were given the opportunity to have sign language interpreters in the examination for them because they had some challenges. And then exam council was able to provide this. It's their own teacher, but then we swapped them. And they went to the various centers and they supported their children. So for the special schools, government is actually doing its best, taking good care of them.
The special schools, how do we fade them out? Because they have a critical role. You have the School of the Blind giving focused education. These children, we see them write the BECE and we see them progress. If we want to fizzle them out gradually into the unit schools so that every child goes to the same school, looking at the way we have started, is it something we should consider, we should do cautiously?
Yeah, and obviously I think that you don't want to get into something that you have not, analyzed very well. I think what we are trying to do is to do this thing very slowly and make sure that it works.
Did the policy give any timelines?
Of course. 5 years, after every 5 years, we are going to review it. And I'm sure her inputs about how she wants mothers, or not mothers, parents particularly, to be involved. That could be an issue to consider. But for me, I'm looking at a very sustainable system.
So in the next 3 years, what should we expect?
In the next 3 years...
Because 3 years we will be reviewing. After 3 years, we'll be reviewing the policy.
Now, I think Jerry said something that 20 districts are the ones that are implementing fully inclusive education. Now, there are bits and pieces of inclusive education going on in other districts, not in the full package. Now, talking about basic screening, talking about getting support in terms of guidance and counseling and parents' involvement. There has been several sensitization trainings for parents, for community members, just to understand the policy. It's all part of the whole process. So it's happening everywhere. But the 20 districts are the ones that are really implementing it fully.
So in 3 years, what do you expect?
So in 3 years, I want to see, about maybe more than half of all the districts we have in Ghana, and we are talking about more than 100 districts who are implementing,
inclusive
education.
Full package.
Full package.
From the service perspective, what is the plan for the next 3 years?
Government has decided to upscale it, the inclusion, to cover as many districts, if not the whole of the country, because 20 and we have 216 districts. We have a gap of 196.
Do we have a good understanding of the number of children we have in these schools, the database? Because then we need to know what numbers are we talking about and things like that. Is it part of the grand scheme of things? Because
yes, it is. It is.
So in conclusion, in the next few years, what are we expecting?
Yeah, we are expecting that the education sector strategic plan, the new one that's coming up, is going to address all that, and we have an elaborate plan. Government is actually committed to this inclusive education, and they are actually, they want to, in fact, invest a lot of resources into it. So let's hope that in the next 3 years, we'll cover a lot of grounds than we have covered.
We'll come back in 3 years and look at it. This is something we will definitely keep looking at. Hannah, in your last words, closing remarks.
I think that...
what would you want to see as a parent?
Okay, so as a parent, I love the policy, but I think that we should do better to implement the policy.
And this is one policy that was launched with an implementation plan.
Yes, and I have the implementation plan and everything here.
And standards
and guidelines. Amazing. So we should see speed.
But it is not being done. So we hope that, as he said, government should pump in money. If it's UNICEF, they should pump in money to get things done well, so that parents will stop killing their children and have hope for their children with special needs.
What a way to end parents killing their children.
And it's the truth. We see it every time. So.
Thank you very much. My guests have been Mr. Jalil Odum, Hannah Ahaji, and Mr. Jeremiah Badushaya. Thank you very much for making time to discuss this very important. Inclusive education is important, and let's all support it. We are looking up to government. This is one policy that was launched with standards and guidelines. It was also launched with an implementation plan. Usually what you hear is, oh, the policy, we need to put together an implementation plan. This time, it came as a package. So let's implement it so that we can get all children to school. the Constitution guarantees that. My name is Deborah Kwabla. God willing, same time next week, we'll be here with another edition of Agenda. This particular edition was supported by Star Ghana. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.